Season 2, Episode 2, The Power of No.
Welcome to Starting Now, a Barry podcast, presented by Cinemasins.
Hello everybody, this is Starting Now, the Barry podcast with Chris Atkinson and Barrett Sharon.
Woohoo!
And Mike Hester.
Hey, everybody.
Yeah.
I say the same thing every time.
Yeah.
I'm not creative.
Yeah, who cares? It's just a high. It's all it is. It's a high. Season 2, Episode 2. So we start off in this episode with Barry in the car with Noho Hank, and they are scoping out this monastery that the Burmese gangsters Esther has set up. And this is a funny opening to this episode. He tells him exactly what's going on and tells him that, hey, she's porting people over from Burma. They're staying there in a monastery for religious freedom. They're waiting there until they get naturalized and become citizens. And they're porting drugs and guns through there. And Barry's like, that's actually a genius plan.
It's actually a really good idea.
Yeah. And no, Hank, he's like, it's okay plan. It's an okay plan. I guarantee she didn't come up with it. And so that sets up what Barry has to do. He's gonna have to shoot Esther.
Can I bring up one point of that opening scene that I love? I love when he asks him, "Do you think I'm evil?"
Oh yeah.
And Hank says, "Well, yeah, of course I think you're evil. You're the most evil guy I know." For Hank, this is what he wants. He wants to be a mobster, and he has that inferiority complex or whatever. Like he's not.
He says, do I not tell you that enough?
Yeah, I know. That is great. Like that affirming, like self-help book things. Like you keep saying that, and for him, that's what he wants. That's what he wants to be and can't be. And meanwhile, Barry is in a completely opposite place. Again, we see so many of the characters in this. They see the world through their own view and assume that Barry sees the world through that view. He's acting through that view. You see that with Gene and with Sally, and you're definitely seeing it with Hank here.
Yeah, what an existential question to start off an episode with. Mm-hmm. I mean, where do we stand on this? Like, is he evil? Mm-hmm. We know at this point his character and his personality, and so we're rooting for him. At this point, we're firmly in Barry's corner because he's trying to change and everything. But the methods by which he's trying to make this change are abhorrent, right? I mean, especially the whole Janice situation. So why are we still rooting for this guy? I mean, is he objectively evil?
I was at this point, and I changed after many. I feel like over different episodes, I've changed my opinion. At this point, especially the way that this episode continues, like I'm on his side.
Yeah, you can't
That's
help
how
but
I feel
be,
right
I guess,
now.
right?
Okay, so what's the difference between him and Breaking Bad?
It's almost a polar opposite, right? Like he's trying to do the reverse from Scarface to Mr. Chip? What is it? Mr. Pip? Mr. Chip? The Vince Gilligan always said that Walter White goes from Mr. Pips to Scarface.
Okay.
But yeah, he's trying to reverse all that. He starts at the very the worst of the worst, and now he's trying to integrate himself into society.
It was easy to root for Walt for a while until he started actually having to kill people to cover up what he was doing.
Yeah.
But Barry has had to do the same thing.
Yeah, he has. Yeah.
And I think it's an interesting as this show goes on, how close to Walter White are we getting with this Barry character? Because yes, while he is trying to do the right thing, he will do anything to make sure that it doesn't get out.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, he's like logically he's on the complete different path, but like what he's trying to do is the opposite of that, right? He's going in two separate directions. That's a great observation, actually.
I feel as he is, I believe when the series started that he's killed all these bad guys, and like, I could buy that. Okay, he's only killed bad guys. He's killed mobsters and just bad people, drug dealers or whatever. That is okay. Now Fuchs has put that into his head, but he's been able to believe that, and I, as a viewer, have been able to believe that. And as he's gotten into normal society and started dealing with people, then he's had to actually kill normal people, but he doesn't want to.
Yeah.
He's trying to get away from that. And then we see in this episode, as he actually goes into the monastery, he needs to kill Esther, and then he decides not to.
Yeah.
So that and that makes me on his side.
This is something that can only happen on a TV show, right? Because I don't think that people who do this for a living have any feeling one way or the other about it.
Doesn't seem like it.
I mean, I can't imagine anybody going through some existential crisis. Well, maybe they do, but from what I understand, I think even the writers of Barry acknowledge that there aren't very many like hitmen out there. Like, we make it seem there's more hitmen in movies than there are in the actual world. And it's always interesting to add these little layers like, well, he does it, but he doesn't want to. And so now we have to debate whether or not he's good based on the fact that he doesn't want to do it. And I admit it's hard for me, even though I'm seeing a lot of black and white in his character. It's like, I'm not on the want him to get caught yet list. Although when he's squaring off with Janice Moss, I like that character so much too.
Yeah.
You kind of do wish that she would be like, okay, I'll forget about it, because you want both of them to be able to coexist. Sure. But this is a tough one. I think we are headed towards a Breaking Bad character arc for Barry. There's no other way to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think. I mean, maybe somehow, some way, through all the madcap adventures that they're planning for him, they'll find a way to make it seem like he's completely.
Well, yeah. I won't spoil the end of this season, but the end of the season really takes him into irredeemable territory.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's not there already, like I think, maybe the next season we'll deal with him actually facing consequences for maybe the first time ever of these horrific choices that he's made.
Yeah, you can't get past the fundamental thing where he is great at killing people and great at being, on top of a hill where no one can see him with the rifle shot. He's great at sniping. He is not a great actor.
Yeah.
He is not great at living in the normal world.
He sucks at sneaking up on people.
He sucks at sneaking up on people. He's awkward. He's just not good at much of life like that. And he's just fantastic at this other thing. And he's going to keep getting pulled back into that because people are going to say, hey, I want Barry to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So it sucks for him.
Yep.
Yes, it does.
Sucks for you.
That's why this show exists. It sucks for him. Barry sucks for him. Meanwhile, at the acting class, they are doing this exercise where everybody's got their story that I guess not. They haven't gotten to the define them part yet. I think it's just tell a story, have these people interpret it. So we have these just insane. We have was it Natalie? Yeah, Natalie has the one about she remembers that she was a twin that smothered her twin in the womb.
Oh my god!
and of course, these actors trying to pull this off is just the most insane thing ever. And so like the one guy suffocates the twin, and Jean's like, so is this how you, I know you were a fetus, but but is this how you remember it? And she goes, more or less.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And then it goes through all these other people. This is the great callback, by the way, which I did not notice in this because it had been so long since between seasons when I first saw this episode. But the one for Eric Jermaine and I think Natalie play his parents and say, sorry, it's not your fault, but we're divorcing. We're going to be apart. And then they stand and then Jermaine comes up and goes, and oh yeah, by the way, clean up all these bodies that are in here, you serial killer. It's a callback to that episode where the three people who were tall enough were called into Janice's office, and Jermaine is talking to Barry.
Wow.
And Jermaine's like, you know who did that? I bet Eric did this. He's like, look at him. And Eric waves at him, and Jermaine's like, see? Yeah. It's a great callback. But they're doing these things that Gene finds pretty much fundamentally false. And he's like, why don't we do something that defines us like Barry did with the Afghanistan story? So he says, hey, his story was so real and so raw and emotional, and everybody's like, well, yeah, he went to war. And everybody's like, yes, I know everybody's jealous that he went to war. I know that you want to be in the shit just like he was. And but he's like we should come up with stories that define us and act that out on stage. Write our own thing, act it out on stage. And he says that line, let's make it about us for a change.
Yeah, my God. How up your own ass do you have to be to utter that phrase?
Oh, I know. Holy crap. And then we start seeing a little bit more of this small rift that Sally is above this class. She decides that she doesn't go up to on stage. She's got all this exciting stuff with Gersh. And Gersh has, we'll get into this, but Gersh isn't exactly like getting her like huge plum roles or anything, but she feels like she needs to be a part of this. They've made a reel for her. This is going to showcase all of her acting talent.
What a great way to introduce what she's been doing over this period of time. And it gets referenced many, many times, like, her being in, what is it, Future Space?
Yes, Future Space.
And then, all these other
three
little
prosecutors and
it's great, man.
But I thought she was going to be one of the lead prosecutors.
Oh,
no, she's the person behind.
By the way, so much is being said by all three of these things that are on her reel. The first one is men taking charge and not giving women anything to do. Which we see in a lot of Michael Bay movies.
Sure.
We see it in a lot of movies that are not Michael Bay,
Yep.
but the guy's like, I'm going to go after these guys. She goes, is there anything that I can do to help? Yeah, just let me do my job. So that's a fundamental role that women are always given. Wife roles. Like, let me be worried about my husband or be worried about whoever's going out there to do the real stuff. And that's not a character. It's just like as Sasha's talking about with the British accents, being British is not a character.
Yeah.
That was in that first episode. Being a wife and just being concerned about your husband or whatever is not a big deal. The next one, I think, says maybe more than the three prosecutors one says maybe more than any of them, because yes, we do think it's Sally in the front row, and this is not even a show that got picked up. Because the one of the mics is like, why did this show not get picked up?
Yeah.
But we see the blonde hair in the foreground, and the guy is like, you guys have battled sexism and all this stuff, and now you're my prosecutors and everything. And there's these three women, and they're all just drop dead gorgeous women. Sally's not gorgeous enough to be in this role. That's what that is saying, even though it doesn't say it anywhere.
Yeah.
But it's clear she can play that. That's the thing that they're subtly saying with this, is that she's not pretty enough.
Yeah. In the first season, when she goes to that audition that she eventually gets kicked out for the military doctor or whatever it is, Sarah Goldberg is objectively beautiful.
Yeah.
Gorgeous even. But you see her in that room with women that are like at a different level. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. You're like, oh, she somehow looks homely in this situation, and that's exactly what that leads to in the prosecutor's thing, is that even as beautiful as she is, there's another tier in Hollywood standards.
Yeah.
You know?
And her role is to come in to be the secretary and be like, yeah, I got somebody on line 5 or whatever. And he's like, tell them to hold on. I'm talking to my prosecutor. And then, yes, future space. Dude from Better Call Saul is playing the father, and he's telling his son, "We're gonna get out of here. We're gonna escape." And the son's like, "Don't we die if we escape?" And then it comes up to Sally's role, and she's the mom, but she's got this awful like, you know, basically saying, "Pay attention to your father. He's the man." and then the ship blowing up, and these two Mikes who are in this Gersh are like, they don't give a shit, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty clear. Like I don't know how familiar you guys are with this type of person, but like they're excited about this stuff, but they say stuff that's like, you're way too excited about this.
Yeah. You're
not even giving me the benefit of saying, okay, not the greatest yet. At least give me that.
Yep.
Don't sit here and champion this is all this. The one mic guy is like, he's like, this is so fucking exciting, and and it's not exciting. It's a reel that's got some very basic nonsense on it. It may help you get some more work, but it's not the breakthrough. But these guys are just like, yeah, but she does have a champion in this room, played by the one woman in the room who's playing this. Lindsay is her name. And she's the one who's actually going out and doing the work, it looks like, while these other two guys just like pretend like this is all good and everything.
I want to go back, not too far back, but right when she is leaving for this meeting, and so she ends up not doing her thing so that she can go to the Gersh, and she has to drop Gersh in there, and how proud she is that she has representation at this place. And she has to rub that in everybody's faces, and they all resent her for it. And it's so funny that and I think going back to the last episode we were talking about, she is still in this because she's the top dog, and that's what she wants to be. One in Hollywood, meanwhile, in this, she is very much at the lowest rung of the ladder. She hasn't done much anything, and she hasn't able to accept that. I love that dichotomy, and I love how awkward it was when she was leaving, and how she had to have that scene for her.
It's like someone who's graduated from high school, right?
Yeah.
They're a freshman in college, and they come back, and they're like, they used to be the big fish, and now they're a really small fish.
Yeah.
It's got that quality to it, doesn't it?
It's got to be how Hollywood works too, right?
Oh yeah.
There's got to be so much inside baseball in this, like the over-enthusiastic agency and stuff like that, and really putting lipstick on a pig as far as dressing up these roles that are thankless roles.
Well, this is sort of the I don't know if you guys watch Entourage at all, but there's a season where Vinny quits the one that he's been with Ari Gold this whole time. And he quits him somewhere midway through the season, and then he's looking for representation. And then there's this one episode where he's going around to all the agents, and these agents all have that same package where they're like everybody is selling their brand out there. McDonald's, Microsoft, Vinny Chase. and so like everybody's got this presentation, and then finally he goes to Ari Gold, and he's like, well, this is the guy, this is my boy, he's not going to have some fakey thing, and he has the exact same presentation. So yes, I have a feeling that this happens quite a bit. She does go back to the acting class, and she's on stage, and she's not doing her character. She's just complaining about how Gersh isn't giving her the strong parts. And Cousineau says, why can't you lend your truth? She says, I can't experience my truth with these weak parts. And he goes, why can't you? And so he doesn't answer anything. And she sort of comes to all this realization on stage. She's like, wait a minute. Are you trying to tell me that because I was married and he was abusive and I stayed in for years that I was weak in my marriage, and that's why I'm getting these weak parts? And he just stands there.
He's just staring at her, right? Yeah. This is maybe not the first, but this is one in a series of brilliant monologues
Yes.
from Sarah Goldberg.
There's one later that
that blows it out of the water.
I'm getting chills thinking about it just now, but yes, it's her going through this whole thing, and she goes, and by the end of her talking about this abuse thing, he says, isn't this your story? Isn't this the thing that you need to talk about? And so, yes, that's what becomes sort of that.
We see again how good he is. He can be as a teacher, especially with her.
Mm-hmm.
He can bring something out of her there. Her problem is not that she's booking work.
Yeah.
her problem is this old thing. And Sally really doesn't want to face that, but she kind of needs to, and that leads to the whole seeking your truth thing that ties in with Barry and all.
Isn't that what he says? Even he says, what are we supposed to be feeling bad for you because you're booking work?
Yes, exactly.
That's a great. I really do love this interaction. You're absolutely right. He gets this out without saying anything.
Yep.
And for a guy as garrulous as Kuzno, it's odd that like he just shuts up and just looks at her.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had those experiences, especially in like psychiatry, where the less that you say, the more that you're going to elicit. Like you can literally just prompt with your eyes, and that's the dynamic that they have right there. And it does show that he's good at this. Every episode is some little hint that he's excellent as this acting coach.
Realize he's only as good a teacher as the students are in front of him, because he realizes he could try really hard and try to get some of these guys to act right, but they don't have it. He knows that she does, and so he uses different techniques with her, and then even with Barry too. Yeah. So he knows that he can bring the best out of her by doing certain things, and he can't do that with anybody else.
All the other ones, when they go up there and they do their thing on stage, and they have these shots where he's just rolling his eyes.
Oh yeah.
And they do that pretty consistently if you look for it. So, yeah.
By the way, they did this. I think they started this towards the end of the last season, but they did move away from that whole movie part thing.
Yeah.
It started off as this funny joke that they were just doing movie roles, and they even make a mention of it. He says, it's an LA acting class. I guess they do movie roles. And I get the sense that maybe possibly people around LA said, no, they do plays and stuff. That this feels really false to me. So they've completely gotten away from that.
Have. I didn't even realize that until you just said it. But yeah, starting with Macbeth, essentially, starting with the Shakespeare thing. Yeah, they've gone into, the front page and all that stuff, and now doing these self-written memoirs essentially on stage. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Huh. Kuzno is looking at a picture of him, and we see the young Henry Winkler holding a baby, and it's it's maybe from the 70s or something like that. And he decides that he's going to reunite with his son, who runs a produce thing in a farmer's market.
Yeah.
And I think this is funny too. He goes up to his son's not watching, but he goes up to the peaches or whatever, and he picks up the peaches, and the peaches start falling and everything. And everywhere is this thing that says Kuzno produce, Kuzno this, and his son turns around and is like, Dad, and he's like, Gene's like, oh my God, what a coincidence.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's setting up a thing that we're not too certain about with this. We don't know how this is going to play into anything. We know he's sort of in this time is short. I want to see if I can have any kind of meaningful relationship after Janice.
Yeah.
We know that's sort of but what plot wise we don't quite know yet.
Yeah.
I was really concerned. I think I said it in one of the earlier episodes, really concerned that this was going to lead to, it's like, we're going to explore this other side of our other characters that I did not want it to happen. And you see that in second seasons a lot with other shows, and they're trying to figure out, where do we go with this? We'll explore this character. It's like, I don't really want that. But you see here, as I watched it again, and as the season goes on, it does fit into the jigsaw that they are putting all these pieces together, because this ends up changing Gene.
Yeah, and he plays a more substantial role as this season goes on, for sure. I'm like you. I was like, man, do we really need this?
Yeah.
The really cool part of that scene is that it's very natural. It's exactly how you would act. It's not like he doesn't have like all this angst towards Dad, even though he hasn't seen him in like 10 years or something like that. It's just very natural. He's like, man, you've never been a part of my life. I'm fine without you. And you can see where Kusuno isn't super like inside, like his guts like pining for this relationship. It's almost superficial, like he's introducing himself to him again, and it's not like, the father pines to have this and the son has all this angst. It's just more of like a natural conversation that they're having, having been apart for all these years.
And he says something that really affects Gene, where he says, I don't need you in your life. What you have your theater, and it's just like a temple to your ego.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he really internalizes that because it changes something that happens with Barry. If we get back into the Barry plot.
This scene is bookended by, you have Kusuno saying, you're doing the Afghanistan story. Barry says, can't I just change this to the time I met you? And of course, this is very big and feeds into his ego and everything. And he's like, yes, let's do that. And I can even go back to the archives and come up with some tapes.
I know.
And Barry's like, no, not necessary. And everything. He's like, well, you know what? I'll go ahead and do it anyway. I'll go ahead and get Natalie to do it. This is the other thing. I don't know if I noticed this in the first season, but a couple of times Natalie is just a bitch boy.
Yeah.
He when he's ready to leave, he throws the keys over her head onto the stage and says, hey, get my car. And in this one, he's like, I'll go get Natalie to run all this stuff in the archives for me. So he knows that he can just push her around and everything. I feel so bad for that character.
I know. Everybody pushes her around.
Yeah, it's so true. So then this scene with his son happens when he comes back. That, by the way, before we get into this is one of my favorite sight gags of all time that happens in this. So he's looking at all these posters of him, like he's in Macbeth.
Yeah.
He's in he's in a couple others, but then the one goes over and it says Gene M. Kusunow is 12 Angry Men.
Yes, that was great.
That's a one-man play.
That's great.
Is and he hears Barry, and I gotta come up with this guy's name. He comes up in these it's Antonio.
Yeah.
Antonio is playing Kusuno in this, and Barry is basically playing it kind of like he did when he was at the car with Kusuno and telling him this story. And Antonio is like just fucking everything up. Like he's mispronouncing words and all that. It could be a second language type of thing going on, but he's messing it up. And Gene comes in and witnesses this and basically says, "Okay, you're doing Afghanistan."
Yeah.
Because this is bullshit.
This isn't working, and he's had that talk with his son about the temple to your own ego. It's like, well, this is just another part of that's affected it, and that has changed the story. And really, when you're watching them do this together, that's not real. It's not really what happened.
It's a stupid idea.
It's a dumb idea, and it doesn't work. And it is the idealized thing in Barry's head, and not actually what happened, which is fascinating because that ties back into Sally and how it is she has the idealized version of what she did with her husband. That comes up a little bit later in the series.
Oh, it comes up several times in different iterations.
Yeah.
And I think that's fucking brilliant the way that they do that.
It's great. And it starts here where she's on stage and she just says, I got away from it. I was, I just did all the right things. And she has this I am awesome thing when she got away from it. Now she's not with violent men anymore.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Although, here's a question though. Contextually, she isn't with somebody who's going to hit her.
Right.
I mean, yes, he's a violent man. It's a little bit of a blanket term that she uses. And I think we know in context it doesn't mean Barry, because Barry's not the type who's just going to fly off in anger and start hitting her and stuff like that. Is this in the first episode where he gets praised by Gene and then they go outside and she talks to him and says, he's like, "Are you going to be there for me?" And she goes, "Well, not tonight. I've got to have drinks with Gersh. And tomorrow it'll have to be after yoga, but before my audition, and then I'll have to be working towards my audition anyway. But we'll find a window and everything. And there's another point. So that's a thing that I think is starts the little bit of a crack. There's also, I think it's either in the first or second episode where she I believe it's in the first one, because she says that you've taken down your walls now. She thinks it's because of what she was saying.
Yeah.
That brought that wall down, when it was really him trying to save the class and everything. And she just doesn't know his motivations at this point. So she thinks, oh, well, it's because of me, because I told him to tear down that wall.
Yep.
So
more of the self-centeredness that a lot of these characters have.
Oh, yeah.
And she especially.
Yeah, for sure. And so now that sort of leads us to what his task at hand is which he goes back to his apartment. He's living with Jermaine and this other guy. What is his name?
Is it Nick?
Nick.
Yeah.
He's living with them, and they're obviously just like bumming off of him and stuff. They're playing a video game and not even really paying attention when Barry comes in. Barry's actually got the perfect place to be at.
Sure.
Nobody's going to
I bet
bat an eye.
I bet you his name's not even on the lease.
Yeah.
I mean, because he's probably keeping a low profile and he doesn't want Fuchs to find him.
Yeah. Barry's like, "I got your Gatorade," and he's like, "Oh, that's awesome." And he's like, "Oh, can I get you tomorrow?" Jermaine's like, "I can get you tomorrow. I don't have any money right now." And Barry's like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." He's never been about money anyway. Goes into his room and he unzips his box spring, which has got tons of weapons in it. And he puts that bullet in the bullet that Noho Hank gave him into the little magazine, and now it's on. He's going up to the monastery to kill Esther, and once again he goes in. He's got the perfect shot. They're turned around. Everything he could kill and just go. He doesn't do it.
Why? Why doesn't he?
Yeah, that's a good question, right?
I don't.
He's
I don't
already
get it.
he's already seen what happens when he doesn't do a job. And he knows what will happen if he doesn't do this job.
He's in a situation where that is the absolute worst decision that you could do, is not kill this person, because A, Hank has threatened the class if he doesn't do this. B, she's an objectively bad person, so it's not like he's killing somebody that like Taylor or somebody like that, right? And like. He's right there. It is the most simple plan possible, and for the first time, besides the Taylor thing, we see him just peace. Like I don't get that. I understand how it goes plot wise, but I don't understand why.
I think it goes back to the starting now thing. He does not want to kill anymore, and that
he hasn't killed anybody.
He
since
hasn't
then,
killed
right?
anybody. He doesn't want to kill anybody. He is being forced to kill someone here, and he can't do it because in his head, this is where the morality has gotten to, where killing people is bad, which is a good place to be for most of us. But in this case, he probably should have just done it, but his head's not quite there. He doesn't want to be a hitman anymore, so he has to get out of there. And it is good for the plot, but I can see
it honestly does end the whole all the loose threads are done at this point. I think if he, I mean, in his mind it should be. Sure. He doesn't know about Fuchs yet. This would be the end if he did it right here, because no one else is going to be coming after him. Fuchs is in Cleveland, he still is, but there's no reason that he's going to be coming back.
He's been at that place before, though. If he had just killed Taylor, it would have ended some. If he had, he thought with Paco that it was just going to be done, and it wasn't.
So maybe he has gotten to the point now where it just never ends, and maybe he's willing to. I mean, maybe he's thinking. Is he thinking I'd rather die now than do this? Because
I don't know, because he puts the class at risk too.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the problem. That's the one issue. Yes, plot wise, this has to happen. It's just that I kind of wish it was one of those things where he did it or he tried to do it and failed instead of just didn't do it.
Yeah.
And I understand character wise he doesn't want to do it, but it doesn't make sense really for him not to at this point.
I don't think he really is able to think. I mean, he's not like a full person in many ways. And yeah, he is really good at killing someone, but he's always had Fuchs to tell him what to do. And in this case, he's trying to make decisions on his own, and he's just not good at it. And here's another likely bad decision.
Yeah,
so.
Compounded too.
Yeah. So what happens? He turns around. He hears some voices. He's like, "Oh, better duck out of here!" And he goes through this door. And guess what? Everybody in the fucking world is in behind this door. The entire Burmese gangster outfit is there. And he looks down at his gun and he's like, just kind of backs out, walks out the front door, and then he goes to his car. And then meanwhile, there's like all these guys chasing him. And he gets in the car and he starts driving off, but they shoot the back of his windshield, and then he wrecks his car into a van.
Loses consciousness
for just enough time to wake up and then walk away and get out of that situation. So he fails to shoot her, and then when he comes back, Fuchs is waiting for him at his apartment.
He's had a rough night.
He has, he has, and he's like, "Hey, buddy, they caught me out in Cleveland and all that." And they say, "Did you kill a cop? Did you kill a cop?" And maybe something inside of Barry realizes, "What do you give a shit?"
Yep.
Yeah.
And decides not to tell him or confirm it in any way. And he's like, just get the fuck out of here. I don't want to see you again and everything. And he goes into his apartment, and then we find out Fuchs is on camera and Loach is in a van, and he's like, I can get him. Just give me another chance.
I know. And this again is me like saying Fuchs is such a fucking scumbag and a cockroach.
Yeah.
And that I know he cares about Barry. I know he does. And that does come up later on. But he's just willing to sell him out.
Yeah.
At the drop of a fucking hat.
Again, he cares about himself more than he cares about Barry, so it makes sense. I don't think they're mutually exclusive though, to care about one person but care about yourself more.
But it's really interesting that we are mad at Fuchs for doing that. He doesn't want to go to jail, so he's going to sell his friend. Well, Barry didn't want to go to jail, so he killed Chris. Well, why do we not?
There's that. And what's interesting, when Fuchs does confront him, it drives home that not only did Barry kill Janice to keep his life the way it was, he killed a cop.
Yeah.
Like, that didn't even sink in until he said that. Like, what a line that he crossed, personally, but then, like, that's, you don't kill cops, right?
It really makes me feel bad that at the end of the episode I'm still on his side. It makes me like,
that's what I'm saying,
What does it
man?
say about me as a person?
Evil. Maybe the show is trying to say this guy is evil. Stop rooting for him, but you can't help it.
I think there may be a lot of other factors other than the fact that he brings up this cop killing thing and why do you care and all that. How did you find me? That was another thing. He didn't tell Fuchs where he was living. The other thing is God, there's three things in this, I believe. One is that he found him, and then the other thing was bringing that up. So at least there are at least a few things about this that are so like out of the ordinary to him that he realized. So that might be the reason why he doesn't kill Fuchs right then and there, because he might have somewhat of an idea that he's at least got a wire on him.
And I think he would definitely err on the side of not saying something. That is probably surely that's a learned trait of his, where you just don't ever admit it ever. Why would you? What's good is that?
Yeah,
he's a trained killer. He knows to do that. So.
Right. But that's how this one ends.
Yeah,
great at the very end. I love the editing where you find out that he's wearing a wire, and he's like, no, I can get him. Okay, and he puts up his hands or whatever, looking back at Loach, and you see Loach in there with the screen and all that. Again, simple, direct. tells you everything that you need to know right there with just a couple of cameras.
Mhm.
So,
I think Hiro Murai and Bill Hader should just direct every
Yeah,
episode.
pretty
that sounds
much.
good to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Alec Berg is certainly good too.
But there's I think I think it's this episode we get some seeds of what's going to happen with Loach later when he's on the computer and he sees his wife and that dude Ronnie is like holding her at this beach and everything. And it made me wonder if the character of May isn't just like some airhead or whatever, because it's almost like she's needling him. Cause she goes, "Oh my God, is that the new guy?" And he goes, "You kind of wish that they just had a dog or something." And he's like, well, she's with another person. Oh my God, I think about my own life and talks about like I have a kid and I don't know how that would be terrible. And oh, you have a kid too. So she might be playfully needling him throughout this, but you don't know. She's kind of got that airhead kind of quality to her.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up because it's very interesting and important that he goes to Cleveland by himself. Does not bring her with her, which is something I missed the first time watching through.
Yeah.
But yeah.
He's justifying it by saying this is personal. This is my partner. And you got to understand that, and that's why you're going to be on the sidelines while I do this. And
you almost wonder if he keeps her separate because of that, because he's not treating her well at all.
No,
for a fellow cop who's supposed to be his new partner. Yeah, so
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, well, that'll do it for season 2, episode 2. Where can people find us and talk about this episode?
Go to the Twitter and follow @NowStarting. And you'll get access to the beautiful brain of Mr. Mike Hester and his Barry knowledge. And you can tweet me @MusicVideoSins. You can email us at Cinemasins@gmail.com. And you can go to SoundCloud and sound off with comments and questions and discussion and stuff like that. We'll get that going.
All right, well, that'll do it for this episode. It's Chris Atkins and Barrett Shear and Mike Hester. We'll see you next time.